Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is an unboxing and first impressions of Giantlands, science fiction fantasy RPG that was produced by Wonderfilled in 2021. They finally issued out, I guess, the remaining portion of their pre-orders, which is how I picked this up. I discovered this game back in June of last year, and so I backed it, and I backed it for a few reasons. Number one, it was at the time it was going to be published by TSR, and I wanted to support TSR in its current iteration. Um, Looked at the fact that this game was, at least it was projected at that time as being either co-written or brought up to date or modified at the time by James M. Ward, which is a writer, an RPG developer and writer that I had great respect for. He goes all the way back to the earliest era of TSR, and primarily knew him for his work with Gamma World and various supplements and other books written for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition. So it also features Larry Elmore artwork, and I was just like, done, sold. I'm really interested. Now, I bought it as a pre-order. It was $80 on pre-order, and I paid around like $93 or something with the shipping and handling and tax. So I was really anxiously waiting for this to come, and you can kind of hear, my first impressions. It is going to be a mixed review. So I'm putting that straight out, there now, that there were certain elements that I was, that I'm really impressed with. And then there are other elements that, I'm kind of scratching my head and trying to, just figure out why. But I will save some of that when I do a real big deep dive into each of the books. So I'm just going to briefly talk about just going through the box opening and showing you what you get in this box set. And then I will talk about the first three books that are in this box set, and just my general impressions of each of the books and what they actually detail. And then I'll do a little bit of a focus on some of the areas that I found either concerning or even in some cases off-putting. So without further ado, let's go to a larger screen. So here we have it. It's a very nice compact box, a slightly different shape than you normally would see in an RPG product. So it'll still go on the shelf well, and all of that. The box is fairly sturdy, and it has unbelievable art throughout. So you have, obviously Larry Elmore covers and interiors, and that's a nice touch having that on the inside. Then as we go through, I'll try to raise this up here, and I'm going to show you a different view of this, but it has it has everything packed right in here. And let me do that and switch to my desktop view. So here we have it. It's going to be a little distorted. I can never quite get these camera angles going, and I have to double check to see if I have this PDF someplace, or I'll inquire about a PDF so that I can actually go through this and do a full review. But you get this little index card, and it's basically a, thank you for backing it, thank you for joining Giants Land, and it's kind of stamped by James Ward and Stephen Deinhardt. So, little touch here. Now, some of the things about this, this setup. So you have the 3-book volume kind of set up then. So that's really old school, and I think that that's what they were going for. What's really neat about this is that there's this little tab here that allows you, if I get it to work right, it allows you to actually pick up and lift the books back out of this. If I remove the books completely, you have this little, like a bookmark, that holds it in. You could see more art on the interior. So those are here are the 3 books plus character sheets and maps, and I'll go over each of those. Um, we also have these tokens and 2 pencils and some dice. And these tokens are pretty sturdy, you know, super thick, either, you know, very thick cardboard, or although they seem to be more plastic. So again, this is my first time really opening the box and taking a look at the contents of the box. And you get a D4 and a D100 and a D10. So, you know, you have your 10s, 20s, 30s, all the way up through 00, and here you have your 1s through 10s, and then your average D4. So the 3 books that comes with this is you have the Spirit Guide, Volume 1, and once again, this is by James Ward, Stephen Deinhardt, with Gary Gygax Jr. So at least some elements of this were worked on by Gary Gygax Jr. It's kind of hard to tell which, you know, who touched what, you know, as they were going through this. But the Spirit Guide is basically the player's guide to the game. Then we have the Keeper's Guide. So a dungeon master or a game master was called a keeper in this. And so you have the Keeper's Guide, which is a, you know, slightly thinner volume. And then finally you have the 5th Age Index. So you have an index, which is essentially a monster manual. It then comes with a full-sized map, and I will actually open this up and show you that. And then character sheets. There's a blank character sheet, and then there are 3. I will turn this around so you can see it a little better. There are 3 pre-gens, and I will display those to you out, you know, in a much better way. Same thing with the map. I'll go over the map. So I am going to go in and talk about the Spirit Guide first, and let's see how I can display this so that you actually get the book and what I'm talking about here. So let's see how this. Now the quality of the artwork is excellent, and the book's physical qualities are very good. You know, it's a decent layout. You know, very easy to, you know, follow everything along. And we get to the forward and talking about, you know, what you hold in your hands is much more than a book with a set of role-playing rules, although it does detail rules for a fantasy apocalyptic campaign. It also contains the elements of fantastic dream, a dream of what it would be like to step into a living role-playing game world. When Stephen came to me with the idea, he asked if I could help him design a role-playing game that would be the basis for a living world, not just a tabletop rule set, but a place we could actually visit. That request was easy to answer, as I have made role-playing games for many decades and always loved trying to step inside them. My various friends and I invented the role-playing game in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in the 1970s. My Gamma World game was the first apocalyptic science fantasy role-playing game, which came after Metamorphosis Alpha, the first science fiction role-playing game. Since then, I've worked on games ranging from Dungeons & Dragons to laser tag. It's been a grand beginning, all that experience to the table for this next great epic in the role-playing game genre. Giantlands is in your hands. All right, and he continues, talking about the game and the fifth age. So the story behind the game is that there is an apocalypse, and the world began before the rise of the civilizations of humanity. Giants ruled the earth. It follows a very it follows a theme or a story that you've probably heard before. Um, so the giants ruled the earth. Then the giants fell out of favor with the gods. They were replaced by humans. Humans then rose. Then humans started to taint the earth, and then the giants began to return. And there was the first, second, third, and fourth age, and now the player characters will be stepping into the fifth age of Giantlands and basically trying to rebuild some kind of a civilization, society, or whatever from the rubble and ashes of the previous four ages. So pretty much, a theme of it, which sounds pretty cool. It's not anything like super unique. It's something, it's certainly a story that I've heard before. Many different versions of it, and then fun for role playing. So let's get into this here. Playing Let's Pretend can be a great deal of fun. The real world, the real world can put pressure on people and give them a lot to worry about. Playing Giantlands allows players to escape the cares of the real world and to become anyone they choose. So far I'm already on to that, right? I mean, he's talking about pure escapism, and I love the idea of it. And let me try to change this view here so that you can kind of see this a little bit clearer. Let's see if I can do it this way and then flip. This might be easier for you to see. Yeah, it probably will be. All right. This is why I like PDFs, so I can actually, just utilize a PDF and go through this for you or with you. So, using their imaginations, players are transported to a near future science fantasy world in which the rules of civilization have been thrown out the window. As their characters, they get to interact with new people, explore new places, and discover new things. But this, but this new world has also its own problems, which the players uh, must try like new things and must solve those problems. The best players strive to have fun, try new things, include others, and collaborate. Create make believe stories for themselves and everyone. Telling a good story cooperatively is what it's all about. Role playing isn't traditionally very competitive because there is no win state. That is, you can't win Giantlands. The only real measure of success at playing are accomplished storytelling goals and having the great time, full of memorable moments. If you want to play again, that's a good sign too. We've tried to take a lot of the war aspect out of the role playing game without eliminating it entirely. Giantlands is a make believe drama created in real time between players as characters in a new world. That's where I start getting a little bit confused, and I think that it starts to move into, well, is this escapism or is this something that you're trying to have the players themselves um, interact with each other rather than their characters interacting, with their own characters and everything. There seems to be a crossover or a muddling between the escapism and the metagame, and it continues along that line and becomes even more prevalent, and that's one of my, scratch the head kind of wonderings about this. There is no strict rules here. Giantlands books provide guidelines for running a simulation. This for the playing the game. When David Wesley, Dave Arneson, and E. Gary Gygax Sr. invented the role-playing game, their goal was the same one we pursue here: a story we told. In some moments, it might seem like the players win or lose, as their characters live or die, but as in life, failure is just another piece of the story. The more you allow yourselves to step into your role, the more fully you and your friends can slip into the world of Giantlands. Hopefully, this book is already painting a picture in your mind of who you might become. Make believe knows no boundaries, and that includes age, gender, and its expression, skin color, and all other factors that may define or limit us in the real world. The world of Giantlands is diverse in all these areas and more. Everyone and anyone can be able to play and feel both welcome to do so and represented in the game world. In the end, role playing is mostly an act of pretending the best you can and helping others to do the same. In many ways, visiting the world of Giantlands empowers us to return to reality stronger, sharper, and more prepared to reimagine who we are in this game of life. So again, he's talking about taking what you're doing in the game and bringing it to the real life. And that's kind of a muddling of what the purpose of participating in a role playing game is. Participation in a role playing game is to escape the real life. Imagine that you are acting as a character very different from yourself, and doing things that you yourself couldn't possibly imagine trying to do or actually accomplishing. And if you're talking just about the social aspect of meeting new friends and and playing a game together and forming bonds that way, that I completely agree with. But it seems like what they're talking about here is that you're going to take life lessons from the game itself and bring those back out. And unless you're talking about just the social aspect of the process of playing a role playing game, with other individuals at your table, then again, I say I can understand that. They go into the definitions of the rules, and I will deal with the rules when we go into that, because these are some other areas that I do have concerns about, such as the D100 system, but particularly how it's done, the ability scores, and that's a real, like, I don't know what you're thinking by doing it this way. Armor, same way. Um, Very strange mechanic that they're using for, those two areas that I can see, it's just a head scratch. It's like, why would you think of this way? And I will go into greater detail. They go into, let's see some of these areas. So artifacts, campaign world, characters. Character, sometimes called a player character, is a fictional representation of the player in the context of the game. Players never die in the game, but their characters can. Players imagine themselves as their characters in the middle of a grand adventure. The player listens to the spirit keeper, but it is the character who acts in response to the action of the story. In this way, the player is just like an actor in a movie developing a character for people to watch on screen. And I agree with that. Again, that's the escapism portion that he's talking about down here, but then it gets muddled later on, once again. So it's a very back and forth kind of struggle that I see them, going through while, in various passages of this, it's almost like, yeah, two people who weren't discussing what each was doing put this game together. And there were certain elements that are contradictory. City Ruins combat, experience level, experience points, Gaia, the Mother Earth is the spirit of nature, and that plays a significant role. Time passes in the game much faster than it does in the real world. During a quest that lasts 4 real hours, many game hours or even game days can elapse. Yeah, so there's times when, they're talking about various aspects of the game that are based on how long characters rest or um, what activities they're performing and such, and so they get into that, and there's a life force mechanic in here where you have a physical amount of life force or abilities, and then you have another that is that represents like a fatigue level of sorts, and so you kind of have both going on, and it's a mechanic I've seen before, and it's a good way of thinking about, I think, hit points as being not just purely it's all physical, uh, all a physical representation of your character's body, but so I've seen that before, and that's perfectly fine. So their life force is a measure of the being's health. A character reduced to zero life force is dead and out of the game. However, each character has 3 souls and can be restored to life that many times. All right. In Giantlands, the players are supposed to have fun, so wounds don't hinder characters or even slow them down. There is no fun in playing a maimed or crippled character. When a wounded character wants to heal, however, rest is necessary. Natural healing restores 5 life point forces every day that the character rests, eats well, and does little to nothing. All right, so they need full rest, um, but you do get 3 lives. So your character can die twice, or a third time, but not a fourth. And so again, it's kind of like getting several mulligans, which they actually also include in this as well. So you can re-roll some of your worst dice rolls in order to and continue rolling up to like 20 times until you get a higher result. Um, and then on the 20th roll you have to stick with that result, and that's to me it's kind of a weird, another scratch your head weird mechanic that they have here. Masks. Now, this one really got me scratching my head. Players wear masks, wear light masks during the gameplay to show all other players what type of being the character is. As time goes on, players may want to buy special masks or make their own using their sigil colors. A mask heightens role playing and is fun to wear. Players who choose to wear masks during gameplay gain a +5 bonus on each of the character's ability scores up to 100 and any maximum score. So if the players are wearing a mask, and I'm going to switch views here to go over this. So if the players are wearing a mask, and later on he will speak about, if they're wearing a costume as well, they get further advantages. So the players are sitting at the table wearing these masks. They're getting these extra points, and for their characters. And again, that's crossing over that outside of the game, behaviors and thoughts and such, and inside of the game. Now he's talking about this, and I think this is primarily Stephen Deinhardt is pitching it as in that this is how you make Giantlands more immersive, is by the players technically cosplaying at the table and wearing these masks at the table uh, in order to gain these bonuses. And if you don't do that, um, your character is going to, suffer, a technically a -5 to all of their ability scores, and have further hindrances if they're not in costume as well. And he goes more into detail with this, and I will highlight that when we get there. He talks about role playing. Role playing is a more sophisticated version of Let's Pretend. In the old days, we played cops and robbers, and when the kids shouted, "Bang, bang, you're dead," the fight began about whether they hit or not. E. Gary Gygax Sr. created role playing rules so you can still shout "Bang, bang," but you have to roll the dice, all right, to see the results, right? He goes into, there's another section I want to focus on, is subdue damage. And here is another problem that I have, and that is with subdue damage, and basically how it works. I'll wait for it to catch up. There we go. So subdue damage is non-lethal damage. A character who strikes to subdue deals bruising damage to the target. When that bruising damage equals the target's life force, the bruised target falls unconscious. Bruising damage heals completely in 1 day of complete rest. Now, it gets to the point as you're reading through where it really is encouraged, or there's no advantage really to use lethal damage in this game at all, because subdual damage normally would only do half damage, but here it does full damage. And yes, they're limiting it to melee attacks and blunt attacks and such, or the blunt side of a sword, the flat of a sword. But the point is that it does create the impression that there's certainly no disadvantage to just trying to subdue your way through everything in this game. And so that's just a wondering, like, where they're going with this idea. They go through the core guidelines of the game. They talk about here, so Giantlands is a game for all ages unless otherwise specified. We say ages 12 plus officially just to keep it safe. Though Giantlands is not a combat-driven game, encounters are an important part of any adventure, and this alternate future Earth has many warriors. The game can get violent and scary. Death is to be handled seriously, and characters should die sometimes. Each character has 3 lives, which we call souls. Giantlands details many species, but there are no traditional races as there are in other role-playing games. Characters do have gender, but gender and gender expression are both fluid and as varied as they are in real life. Romance and attraction are possible story elements, but reproduction isn't a focus. Adventuring is. Furthermore, the game includes firearms, but no contemporary guns, as those are quite outdated in the world of Giantlands. I'm sitting here and I'm reading this, and I'm wondering, why was this necessary? It really isn't necessary. It's really, quite frankly, it's pandering to a segment of an adjacent gaming populace that not going to buy this game anyway. All right, probably don't buy any games, and yet it's catering to that kind of a mentality where they're talking about, um, the game includes, all of these different expressions, but those expressions don't equate to elements of reproduction. All right, so the only reason why you might argue that is because when you get into a discussion of reproduction, it kind of throws the other argument out the window. All right, you know, only two different genders can come together to create life, and so they're trying to say, well, we avoid that part of the discussion and we're just focusing on how you feel about gender, how you express gender, and how you do this. But we're not going to go into the science of reproduction as an explanation as part of the storytelling or whatever, because that's not a story element. But having romance and attraction are story element. It's convoluted, and it's trying to it's kind of like a wishy-washy way of trying to kind of shoehorn this in here to appease a group that are not going to buy this game anyway. All right, and when I talk about a group, I'm talking about those people on Twitter who comment a whole lot about gaming, but they don't actually game and they don't buy the products. They're just trying to assert their worldview on the hobby that they don't participate in, just like they did in comic books, just like they do with movies and such. They never actually turn out and buy the products that they force to be altered, and then when it gets to the firearms part, but no contemporary guns. There are contemporary guns in here. I mean, they're pictured on it. They're in the, there are machine guns. There are laser pistols. There are guns that do damage, and so to try to make it sound like, well, we don't have, you know, we don't have AR-15s in this game. Well, yeah, true. They don't have AR-15s in this game, but they do have guns that do a very similar thing, just like swords do it. So it's just weird that they would take that angle with this. Lucery. I want to focus now on lucery attitude, which is down here at the very bottom. Let's see if you can get it in here, and I will shift it. So, lucery, all players must accept that Giantlands guidelines and take them with some level of seriousness in order to facilitate the best play experience possible. While most children and young adults don't need to be reminded of the need to immerse themselves in the game world, having a strong lucery attitude can keep the game more exciting and believable for all players. Role playing is, after all, a team endeavor. Masks and costumes. So, with that lucery attitude, you're trying to participate in make believe that you're taking serious, and again, one of those things that kind of it's kind of convoluted. It's like, you're telling me to be serious about make believe. You're telling me to separate the player from the character, which is perfectly fine. That's what you're supposed to be doing, because that's what you do in a make believe. But then you're trying to say, but you still have to take this very serious, and then they go back to masks and costumes. Masks are a way to help us stay safe while stepping even more out of our everyday selves and into other roles. Decorate your masks with sigils, human or animal features, or anything else that anything else that makes you feel more like your character. Costumes of any kind also help us and others to imagine more deeply and to suspend disbelief in the fantasy. Um, Again, are we supposed to take this serious, or are we looking for escapism? He has a section in here, and I wanted to really point it out, where it makes wearing the masks and potentially costumes mandatory in mandatory in any kind of convention or organized play. And I just wanted to focus on that. Creating a character. We go into creating a character, and I will some, spend a lot of additional time on character generation for this. But just going through this, here's the mulligan rule that I spoke about a little bit, where you get to re-roll your lowest roll, and and even if it's a large roll, like a large number, you get to roll until you either exceed it or you must accept the 20th roll. Talk about something that's going to really delay the gameplay down. Certainly breaks immersion if you're rolling up to 20 times to re-roll something. Um, so just a very bizarre rule to include in there when you're talking about immersion. Um, you're going to randomly generate your starting equipment, which is another strange, strange thing. It's kind of hard to conceptualize your character if you have to roll to see what kind of equipment they're going to have. We get back to costumes here. Here we go. So costumes and masks. So far he's gone back to costumes and masks 3 times. All right. Mentioned it earlier on. Then so it's mentioned 3 times in the first 16 pages of the rule book. So what you hold in your hands is the beginning of a new place in your imagination. It's a work in progress meant to be co-created by the spirit keeper, the spirits, and the designers as we all play together. Costumes and mask creation is an important part of playing Giantlands. The more you can step into Giantlands world and live in it, the closer we get to our goal of creating a living make-believe world for the collective imagination. Costumes and masks help us. Masks are simple, natural, and ancient way for people to take on new personas. Putting on the mask helps you slip into an altered state of mind in which you can transcend the normal boundaries of reality. For the reason we encourage players to create costumes and masks to wear at the table and require them at official Giantlands live action events. You can purchase costumes and masks if you like, but we strongly and sincerely suggest that you craft your own. They can be as simple as cardboard and tinfoil construction. I laughed when I read that because I was like, yeah, like tinfoil hats. Um, or even modified using items. Before you know it, you'll have a small collection of characters and costumes that will help you step into the character at a drop of a hat. Players dress up in great fun, but it comes with the game benefits too. The costume rules state that if you wear a mask, you add +5 of your abilities to your ability scores. If you wear a full body costume, you can add +10 to each ability score. So at this point, your character has been generated, and like I said, I am going to go over that in more detail, and we're going to start getting into some of the some of the more in-depth parts of the rules, such as like the magic system and stuff, and I am going to save that for later. I just wanted to give you a first impression of where the game really starts going through. So just going through that introductory part of the first 16 pages, and it's like I said, it's just a head scratcher. It's really bizarre what they're, at one point they're talking about escapism, and then the other point they're talking about you're going to wear these masks and costumes, and you're going to go into a public space and do this in order to get those in-game mechanics that will make your character, that much better, including a plus 10 potentially to each of their attribute scores. And it's almost like there's a total disconnect between that separation between gaming and the real world. And I can immerse myself into a gaming experience without having to wear a mask and a costume and do cosplay. That's cosplay. That's a totally different thing. Cosplay is not role playing at the table. They neither are required of the other, and to make the game, to make that an aspect that's integral to the game, because that players are going to say, well, you shouldn't play at this table if you're not going to wear a costume and a mask, because your character's weakness is going to affect all of us at the table now, and we're going to have a harder time doing what we're looking to accomplish because you're not wearing a mask and a costume. If you're the only table, let's say at a public library or even at a local game shop, where you're wearing these masks and these costumes, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. If like myself and others that grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and we were the nerds. We were the kids that got, sometimes we got picked on, we got bullied, and now you're telling players of this game, you should further highlight the fact that you're playing this game. You're wearing this mask. You're wearing this costume in public. It's like it's going to be a bully magnet amongst young kids looking to play this game. It's like when I was growing up, yeah, we played D&D. We played D&D sometimes at the public library, but you couldn't tell what we were going to do when we were walking in the door. It's just such a weird thing to me, and it struck me as like, I don't know why this would be a game mechanic. So as I said, I'm about to dig into the other parts of this book, and so I'm going to save those for afterwards, so that I can spend amount of time on each of the books, this time as a first look, and then go into a little bit more detail. So the second book I'm going to take a real quick look at is The Keeper's Guide, and so this is the GM's Guide, and here we have a little bit of the history of the giants and the different types of giants. We have the order of actions, and the combat time and defensive maneuvers and surprise and melee and missile combat. And I will spend additional time on this as well. The two mechanics that I found very odd in this, is that first of all, the D100 system for rolling attributes, your attribute scores are going to be anywhere from 1 to 100. And to me, that's too far a range to actually deal with. Even if they do break it down into the +1 range, the +2 range, or the -1, the -2 ranges, even if you break those percentages down, the point is that for you to get from one level to another takes that many more points to do it. It's not like going from a 7 to an 8. All right, when you're dealing with going from a 41 to a 49, it might take twice as long to increase your character into that next level of category. So that's one thing that I wasn't really really fond of, that idea of the attribute scores having that kind of a range. The second problem I had was just in a D100 system as it is, and so in some cases you have an armor class of a 15, which means that in order for your armor to work, you have to roll below a 15. It's not, well, you're going to take 15 points off the attack roll that's coming at you. The attack roll comes at you, and if they hit you, then you have to roll your armor to see if your armor worked to prevent it. So armor is not a passive um, protection. It's very active. If they did that for a shield, I would understand that. That's an active defensive maneuver, but your armor itself is not. And so that was another thing that struck me. I was like, again, another really weird choice of mechanic to go with. So again, I will go into more detail with with the actual combat mechanics of this game in a future video. The third and final book of this is the basically the monsters manual, and I don't have a problem with this at all. The artwork is very good. We have it here. The artwork is very good, and just oddly enough, I read this particular creature, which I can't pronounce. An Akialataupa. It's kind of like a flying lizard with feathers, but it has no wings. But it does fly, and it flies above you and shoots you with these feathers. And so it's to hit. That's another way of saying like its ability to hit you is a 65, pretty high. I mean, it hits often. Its magic or its lay ability is a 50. Its poison is a 75. So very easy for it to poison you. Its armor is a 15, which means that if you do manage to hit it, the chances of it protecting itself are fairly slim. So that's a good thing. Its life force, so it has 260 hit points. That's a lot. All right. Its attack with the feather is a ranged attack. They don't tell you how far it goes. It's just that, well, it's ranged, so I guess you get hit. It says it's approximately 50 meters long. See, I'm looking for just like if reduced to 20 or fewer life points, it flies away. All right, so it's very hard to kill this thing, I guess. It'll fly away once it gets to 20 points or fewer. So its ranged attack with its feather does 9 life points of damage. Its bite, which is a melee attack, does 25 life points of damage. The creature flies above the heads of its foes and throws feathers until the intruders leave. I guess, or until they kill it, but I guess it's very hard to kill because it has 260 hit points, basically. So a lot of these creatures, they have a tremendous amount of life points. So that's the one thing that I've noticed. Everything has quite a bit of life force, and I'll go into more detail when you see like the life force is produced by looking at several of their attributes and adding them up and everything. So there's a lot of hit points in this game, and you deal out damage that's much lower. So it's a very non-lethal game, at least from what I could tell so far. So here's our map, and I will show the map really quickly. The other side of the map is an easily poster, which is phenomenal. So we have here the map, and this is clearly, the game world map is clearly the United States with major portions of it underwater. Perhaps they watched Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth movie when thinking about this. but you certainly have, the California coastline that you can see here, and you have what is Mexico down here. You have the Dakotas, so it's definitely the United States. You don't see any of the East Coast, or it's very broken up and hard to tell where that is. I don't know what these features up here are supposed to be, but that's the game world. And then the character sheets are, and I will show you this. I will switch to. I will show you these separately. Let's put this down here. I'll reconstruct my box set here. And set that aside. So let's see. Oh, my daughter's school is calling, so you probably hear that coming over. Let's go right here. So here's a character sheet. And I will wait until... Okay. My daughter's schools are closed tomorrow. So here we have a character, its species, its profession, its skill level, its experience, its chieftain, its tribe, its band, its age, its hearing, which is a 37, so it hears things 37% of the time. Its vision, 87. Its smell is 88. Its faith is pagan. Its height and weight. Its gender. Its spirit, so these are its ability scores. So spirit, mind, and body, 80, 63, 97. Toughness is 89. Urgency is 43. And luck is 96. And then its ability to hit is a 25. Its armor is a 30. So again, not very likely that its armor is actually going to protect it if something does hit it. You have to roll a 30 or under in order for your armor to work. Its poison saving throw is a 25. And its lay ability or its skill ability is or its basic ability is a 45. And you can do, very similar thing with just a blank character sheet. You fill in your own information. Like I said, this is a first look. It's going through, I read some sections of that very first book, just to get a general idea of what the premise of the game is. And overall, I have to, like I said, it's very mixed. I have very mixed impressions on the game. Am I glad I got it? Yes. I'm still glad that I purchased it because there are some elements of this that I find to be interesting, and overall the quality of the box and the art and all of that is still there. Do I wish it was cheaper than what it was? Yes, I do. I think that the game system wise, it just doesn't. I could have gotten a better game system for that same price or cheaper. But like I said, I wanted to give it a try. I wanted to see what it was all about. I still want to dig into it and take a good look at it. Will I run this at a convention? If I have to wear a mask and costume, no. Just not going to do it. And, am I going to want to be the only one sitting at that table and not getting a 5% bonus or a 5-point bonus or a 10-point bonus? No. You're basically saying, well, if you're going to sit at this table, then you have to conform to these things. And to me, that's not an inclusive table. Now, is it? It's not. It's not really saying, all are welcome at this table. It's saying you're welcome at this table as long as you're going to wear a mask and wear a costume and kind of conform to this idea that you can't be immersed in the game session without these things. And to me, that's the issue I have with it. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know that the people over at Wilder, you know, Wonderfilled were waiting for this review, and so if they do watch this review, there are aspects of this that I certainly see are really nice. I mean you know the art, the physical construction, the what you've put into it. I can certainly tell that you care about having put together a game, but to me, I don't think that this was probably play tested enough, and I don't think that some of the systems, like maybe too few people actually play tested this to give you and I can double check and see how many play testers you actually had here. Um, it's proofreaders. Let's see. Special thanks. This might be to the people that actually play tested it. I'm not sure. It doesn't. It just says special thanks, so I couldn't even say that these were play testers. They were proofreaders. Um, yeah, no mention of how many people actually participated in the play test. Um, there's some notable names here. Um, there's Luke Gygax. There's Jeff Leeson. Let's see. No one else really stands out as far as that's concerned. Like I said, proofreading is just editing essentially. So I don't see any mention of play testers, actual play testers. So and of all those names, there's probably only about 30 names there, and so I don't think it's a large enough sample of play testing to have been done um, to work through some of those mechanical things that I just think and it's not just like a bias, like if I have a bias against a certain type of dice mechanic or something. It's it's just conceptually, armor is a passive defense, and now you might inhibit the use of certain armors because you don't have training, in how to properly put them on, but but for the most part, and it also just adds a lot of more dice rolling to it. When I read through, and I will spend some time reading through in the next video, a sample combat um, resolution, I was like, you're rolling again. Just have it as a modifier to the attack. Their armor rating as a modifier to the attack, instead of having to, well, I just hit you. You have to roll now to see if your armor took the entire hit. And I saw no indication that, armor is either all or nothing, right? So if your armor took the hit, then the person takes no damage whatsoever and the armor isn't even damaged. If if you failed your armor roll, then you took 100% of the attack, and it's just a weird system. So I hope you like this video, and to Wonderfield, if you do watch this and everything, I hope that you listen to some of the comments that I'll make as I'm going through this, and I hope you watch other videos as well where they're breaking down the various game systems, and I think you're going to find that there is some room to to make amendments to this, and to put out something that just fixes some of these systems, makes them work a little bit better, and I hope you actually get around to doing that, because I see some problem areas with this. So once again, thanks for joining. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I know it's already Sunday. Be safe out there, and I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. You'll have a great evening.